Good afternoon. Welcome to today's program with Japanese Ambassador to the United States, Sugiyama Shinsuke. This program is brought to you by the YKK Corporation of America. There are some people I want to give a special welcome to. One is Takeuchi Kazuyuki, the Consul General of Japan in the Southeast. Yoshi Demoto, the Executive Director of the Japan-America Society of Georgia. Jessica Cork, who is Vice Chair of the Japan-America Society of Georgia. Alex Gregory, former CEO of YKK Corporation of America, and Daniel Ishihara, who's joining us from Brasilia, Brazil, and is the brother of Fernanda Lukine Ishihara. The format today is going to be a conversation with the ambassador, followed by questions from the audience. I'm going to ask everyone in the audience, please submit your questions using the question function on the toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And so questions, not chat. Please use question. Jim Reed is a member of the Board of Directors of the World Affairs Council. He's the CEO of YKK Corporation of America. Jim, I'm going to ask you to introduce Ambassador Sugiyama.
Thank you, Ambassador Shapiro. It's my honor to introduce Ambassador Sugiyama. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Shapiro told me to keep this brief, but I don't think it's possible when you're talking about someone of Ambassador Sugiyama's caliber. It's a real pleasure to have one of the top diplomats in the world with us today. Just to try to briefly explain, of course, Ambassador Sugiyama serves as the Japanese ambassador to the United States and has served since 2018. But that's just part of his 40-year career as a diplomat with the Japanese foreign ministry. He served in embassies in Korea, in Egypt. He served as deputy director of the Middle East and African Affairs Bureau of the ministry, and as director general of Asian and Oceanian Affairs Bureau. He has been director general of global issues. And important for YKK and many of us here, he's also served as the global ambassador for climate change, and also served as Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, all of that before serving in this important post as ambassador to the United States. He is a diplomat and a scholar. He's attended Waseda University and Oxford University. And he has taught international law at his alma mater, Waseda University. He has negotiated nuclear treaties, trade treaties, worked with the UN, so there's really not much he hasn't covered. Welcome, Ambassador Sugiyama. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for your very kind introduction, John, Ambassador Shapiro, Mr. Reed, and then ladies and gentlemen, and all of my friends in Atlanta and your society. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this rather important timely forum. We continue to live under the tyranny of COVID-19, unfortunately. But I'm grateful that the World Affairs Council is carrying on its work, although not face-to-face, unfortunately, but virtually. I'm told that Georgia has lost about 9,200 of its citizens to the virus. All human beings now fight against COVID-19. It is said that these 3 weeks are critical for Japan to prevent its surge and collapse of the healthcare system, while the current death toll in Japan is still low. You see, I'm going to just explain to you when I'm being asked by the people from the audience about this COVID-19 situation in Japan. It is indeed that the number of those people who have been killed is much, much lower than that number in the States or those numbers in Europe. And yet, as I said, we seem to be at a very much crossroad, whether or not we can once again prevent from this pandemic is going to be much, much worse. But anyway, in any sense, we stand with you. And we extend our deepest condolences for those people who have been killed and those people who have been suffered. Big sympathies for those people. Now, with the election, I noticed that these days Georgia has been in the news quite a bit recently, and it is still holding the runoff for both 2 Senate seats to be done on the 5th of January next year. Naturally, as Japanese ambassador envoy from Japan, I keep my professional distance, if not social distance, from election business, because none of my government people, including me, none of our people does have any intention to intervene your domestic politics. It is your people who decide to elect the leader and the vice president, and the senators, the governors, the lawmakers in the House, and everybody. It is not us who is supposed to do. So that is in that sense that I told you that I keep social distance in fighting COVID-19 as well as the political distance from this election. This forum focuses on the Japan-US alliance under a Biden presidency. We will talk about this in more detail in a moment, but just let me say this in introduction. Prime Minister Abe and President Trump had a very good and friendly relationship, not only officially, but also personally. I myself attended numerous occasions of the meetings between the two leaders, and I saw the relationship up close. I have no doubt the current Prime Minister Suga and the President-elect Biden will have a very similar relationship officially as well as personally. In fact, the current Prime Minister Suga called President-elect Biden a few weeks ago to convey his congratulations message. They agreed on further strengthening the alliance and cooperation and cooperating on international challenges such as tackling this COVID-19 crisis. It may sound like a diplomatic nicety to reaffirm the alliance, but there is substance behind such affirmations. So much depends upon our alliance. Fundamentally, peace and stability, of course, but also the economic prosperity of our two nations and then international communities as a whole, the number 1 and the number 3 economies in the world. Here in metropolitan Atlanta alone, I'm told there are 600 Japanese companies directly employing 40,000 Georgians. A lot is at stake in the Japan-US relationship, and a lot of work has done into building the close alliance it is today. I thank you for inviting me to discuss this afternoon. So now I think I try to get standing ready to take up some of the questions so that I can do, I'll see how much I'll be effectively getting back to your participants. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Mr. Ambassador. That was very, very useful. I like the idea of social distance and political distance. That's always it's a good recipe for diplomats.
Yes.
Prime Minister Suga has been Prime Minister for only 10 weeks now.
Right.
Is there a difference in his approach to the United States from that of Prime Minister Abe, his predecessor?
Well, my simple answer is no. You see, Prime Minister Abe had served as Chief Cabinet Secretary under Prime Minister Abe for nearly 8 years. As you might know, these two offices are very close in my Prime Minister's office on the 5th floor. So as I can assure you that the current Prime Minister had been always involved at the time of the Prime Minister Abe's administration in terms of not only domestic policy makings, but also foreign policy makings. And of course, you know, at the time the Prime Minister Abe was in power, that was Prime Minister Abe who appeared in the public and to see U.S. President or other certain foreign leaders. But this is the time for then Chief Cabinet Secretary to become the leader, so that basically he's going to continue what Prime Minister Abe was trying to achieve. So fundamental kind of posture on the part of the current Prime Minister Suga is nothing but to going further based upon what former Prime Minister had done, and then even making much stronger. And then if I might say one thing, which is the most important thing, for the foreign policy issues for the current government and current Suga's cabinet and then current Prime Minister Suga is continuously being put on the U.S. Japan alliance mechanism. This is the linchpin for the Japan's foreign policy. So I'm quite certain that the current Prime Minister is trying to be based upon what the former Prime Minister had done, but trying to even further strengthening the U.S.-Japan relationship. I think that's a fundamental posture on the part of the new Prime Minister.
And how do you expect our relations between our two countries to change in the Biden administration? You know, each new administration tries to distinguish itself from the predecessor. How will they change?
Yeah, you know, I think as a Japanese envoy, it might be too early to say because President-elect is yet to sworn in. We have to wait until the midday of the 20th of January. And then he announced the most leading members of his cabinet. That was only yesterday, the briefing yesterday. The Treasury Secretary was named. And then sometime before, Foreign Policy and Security Team was named. But as I understand it, these cabinet members must go through the confirmation procedures in the Senate after the inauguration ceremony. So I think it would be too early to say what a new administration is going to take up the matter. But nonetheless, I'm sure for the next president, the most important thing is to fight against COVID-19 and then to rebuild the economy. And then, of course, I'm sure the new president and the presidency is taking up the matter, the foreign policy issue. But I'm quite certain that the fundamental posture on the part of the new government in Washington, as well as the only 10 weeks old new government in Japan, been based upon, as I said at the outset, the conviction that the most important thing is the U.S.-Japan relation. So, as I said, I'm yet to see how things are going to develop, but I'm most certain that the fundamental kind of relation and fundamental posture and importance of U.S.-Japan is not going to be changed. Oh, even further, that two leaders and the two governments, I'm sure, are to make further efforts to even strengthen and then make it stronger.
Is it too early to talk about a meeting between Prime Minister Suga and President, and after the inauguration, of course?
Well, yeah. Well, normally, I think as soon as the new president gets into the White House, the summit meeting is supposed to be taking place. And then, but again, it is too early that the president-elect has yet to get done the inauguration ceremony. At this particular juncture, I don't think I can say anything for sure how and when they're going to just try to do that. But one thing we have to think about is that this is under COVID-19 crisis. So this is not a normal time. It might be slightly more difficult to have a face-to-face meeting, and yet that's. I'm not saying that the summit meeting is not likely to take place as soon as possible. I'm not saying that. We haven't even gotten started to talk about the specific thing. I think it's too early because the president is still president-elect. But generally speaking, I think they're going to talk with each other in somehow or other. I think sooner than later, as soon as the president is going to sworn in.
You've mentioned controlling the COVID-19 pandemic. Japan has really done an extraordinary job. The last figures I found is that the fatality rate in Japan is 1.6 deaths per 100,000 population. And in the United States, lamentably, it's 70.6 deaths per 100,000 population. So that's 60 times greater. What's Japan doing that we're not doing? What's the secret? What would if we were to take a lesson from Japan, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to tell you basically 2 points. One, yes, and the second is, if not no, but we are becoming very cautious about what is possibly taking place. Now, the first point, yes, indeed, these numbers show, and in particular, as I said at the outset, I think the most symbolic number is the number of people who have been killed by the COVID-19. You have something like 250,000 something,
right.
And then we have only, well, these days, slightly more than 2,000.
Wow.
Your numbers are really, really right. And then there are, I'm not the health expert, but quite a number of the experts back in my country seem to be saying that there are some certain reasons. Number one is, I think culturally or socially, Japanese people get used to washing hands and wearing masks and those sort of things, even before COVID-19 crisis got started. When I was a small boy, I was always told by my father and mother, particularly my mother, that when I got back home playing baseball or whatever, I was really, really strongly stuck that, okay, Shin is my name, get off your shoes and wash your hands and then clean up your mouth before you get into the house. So that's a kind of, cultural tradition. And then wearing masks is a part of the kind of, normal life. And plus, as I remember, when I was a kid, I was taken by my mom to go to what we call a healthcare center, which are something like slightly less than 500 places in the whole world. I mean, the whole Japan. In my childhood, the healthcare center is a walking distance, and then I was quite often taken by my mother to check my health and all sorts of things. And I think actually this system was introduced by Americans after the war.
Of course.
So, yeah. So that was the time in Japanese health situation was not that much good in late 1940s, early 1950s or something. But thanks to that, I think Japanese society seemed to be slightly doing rather better in terms of the number symbolizing fighting COVID-19, such as the number of the people who have been killed. That's number one. Now, the second point is, and yet, with some reasons, these days, the number of people who have been killed seems to be drastically increasing. It was something like 1,300. It was something like just 1,000. But now, over the past couple of weeks, it went up as high as more than 2,000. And then they say we seem to be at the crossroad. As I said repeatedly, whether or not we are able to prevent this to go into another pandemic, to see the drastically increased number who have been infected as well as who has been killed. And then we seem to be really can be faced with a shortage of bed in hospitals and medical cares and that sort of thing. So my government is now taking the utmost cautious approach, so that we are not going to go to that very difficult pandemic situation. But I'm told that Joe Biden has warned of a very dark winter. I would like to add, if winter comes, can spring be far behind, as an English poet said. So the situation in US and Europe and Japan are not exactly the same and similar, and yet we do have the same kind of pandemic problem. Not totally identical situation, but the hardcore matter is the same.
That's great. I love that. And I love the idea that your health system was introduced by the United States in Japan, and you've done so much better than we have. Let me switch the topic to the economy. You talked about that earlier. Japanese automakers, Honda, Mazda, Nissan, Subaru, Toyota, all have multiple assembly plants in the United States. Right. In fact, the Honda Odyssey has the highest US content of any automobile made in the US, which I'm going to repeat that for the audience. I mean, that's just extraordinary. The Honda Odyssey has the highest US content of any automobile made in the United States.
You're quite right.
Do you see this trend continuing? Do you expect Japanese automakers to build more plants in the US?
You see, my short answer is surely yes. But let me explain something slightly more detailed. This happens to be my second tour to be stationed in Washington, D.C., this time as a Japanese embassy. But I and my late wife and my two children stayed here in Bethesda some 30-some years ago as a young diplomat, was secretary. Then I was in charge of bilateral trade in 1989 to 1992 or something. You see, when I came here as an envoy to 2018 March, I was really stunned that the situation seems to have been completely changed. You see, 30-some years ago or something, Japan was target number one because of the huge trade surplus on behalf of the Japanese side. And then they say Japan bashing that sort. Indeed, in 1980s, when I was, in particular late 1980s, when I was here the first secretary in charge of the bilateral trade, Japan exported some 3.5 million units as a complete car to the United States market a year at its peak. And Japan only produced not kind of export of the complete car, but produced in this soil of United States of America only less than 500,000. That was some 30 years ago or something. Now, the current numbers upside down and totally different. I'll show you. The currently Japanese automakers produces slightly less than 4 million units in this store, using American parts, using American jobs, using American facilities. I've been taking a look at Honda, Nissan, Toyota, everywhere. And then when I saw at the spot, then I saw basically American CEO, American vice presidents, American workers, and American parts. These are, of course, done by the name of Toyota, Honda, Nissan, whatever. But these are really American cars being, manufactured by American laborers, American parts, and American management. While the number of the export of complete Japanese automobile from Japan to the soil of United States is still high at the level of 1.73 million units. But so it is not exactly like ups and down, slightly less than 4 million, 3.5 million something units complete export in 30 years ago or something, and then slightly less than 500,000 units of car being produced in the soil of the United States. But the trend, obviously, these figures do show the trend has become totally changed. And I think this is something that I can proudly tell every audience this afternoon, that the Japanese business, including these auto manufacturers' attitude towards U.S. market has become totally changed. They are not only trying to export the complete cars from Japan to the States, but they are trying to invest more. They are trying to manufacture the U.S. in the U.S. soil using all the U.S. people's job and their parts and their management skill. So I do believe, as you said, Honda or Toyota, Nissan, or every single car manufacturing company seems to become a part of U.S. economy, a part of American company, a part of U.S. society. And then I'm very much proud of the efforts being made by these business circle people, including the auto manufacturers.
Do U.S. politicians at the state and local level appreciate that, appreciate the efforts that Japan is making to assemble automobiles in the U.S. rather than export to the U.S.?
Really, I do believe that every single local people and then every single governor or mayor or whoever surely is welcoming this Japanese business attitude, including these automakers. Why? Because that creates more jobs, that creates more certain parts to be purchased by these Japanese automakers manufacturing these auto things at local places such as Georgia, such as Kentucky, such as Tennessee, such as everywhere. So, automakers are not alone. Also, say Daikin. Daikin is the air conditioning maker, but Daikin invested somewhere in Texas, and then Daikin is sort of growing. They changed, in Japan, the air conditioner is destined to be much, much smaller because of the size of the land, because of the size of the house, and yet they must adjust their kind of strategy of management, producing the much bigger air conditioner type to be suited to the need of the consumers in this country. And they are doing. And I think they are doing very much, successfully. I'm very much, taken aback when I just saw the factory and met with the CEO and these people. But I feel as a Japanese envoy that I'm very much proud of everybody in the business circle to do that. And then they try to be not only a good neighbor in the local community, but they have become really part of the U.S. society and community. So I think I'm quite certain that every local people, as I said, the city mayors or governors and everybody must be in the mood of welcoming the Japanese investment. By the way, lastly, I think I can point out that I think it must be, if my memory is correct, last year, quite recently, the whole total volume of Japanese investment to the States, United States of America, exceeded those numbers of United Kingdom students. UK was the investor number one until quite recently, but Japan override the number of United Kingdom to become number one foreign business investors, which I am very much proud of.
Oh, that's great. Let me just tell you that YKK Corporation has been a tremendous corporate citizen here in Georgia, both in Atlanta and in Macon, where they have a huge plant.
Yes.
Let me switch the topic just a little bit. Under Prime Minister Abe, Japan made a gigantic effort to bring more women into the workforce, and especially to encourage women to return to work after they've taken maternity leave.
Yes.
Has this effort been successful?
Well, again, number one point is I have to say, not yet. But the second point is yes. Now, let me try to start with number one point. Unfortunately, yes, indeed, former Prime Minister Abe to be succeeded by the current Prime Minister Suga II, being put the most emphasis upon the women's employment, women's empowerment. And yet, now let me start with the first point. They put indeed that from the gender equality and the labor market reform. But unfortunately, the current number is still low. Say, female ministers in the cabinet. The number is only 2 out of 21 cabinet ministers. You have 4 out of 24 or 23 in US cabinet. Female members of the Diet, lawmakers. US Congress has 23.7%, while Japanese number is unfortunately less than 10, 9.9. Female managers is much, much worse. US female managers percentage is something like 40, whereas the Japanese female managers numbers seems to be slightly above the level of 7.8 or something. Now, you introduced that before I came here, I was Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, which is somewhat equivalent of the London Permanent Secretary. So I was the top of the bureaucracy. I was responsible for housekeep. I was responsible for personal affairs and something. And I've been really, really strictly instructed by then Prime Minister, then Chief Cabinet Chief, who is now Prime Minister, and everybody, that the Foreign Office number of female employees not that much high. That was unfortunate. At my time, you know, I chair the top management people above the level of the Director Generals, basically something like 20. And at my time, female top management members of that meeting was limited to 2 or 1. When I was leaving Tokyo to become a Japanese envoy to the United States of America, it was about to become nil, with some reasons. And yet, so this is the first aspect to tell you the truth. Unfortunately, we are yet to achieve what we are supposed to achieve. But we are making the utmost efforts to turn things changed in the near future to come. Now, that's the second point. My second point is that when I was the top of the bureaucracy, yes, in the very top management meeting, there are very few female. And yet, when I was the top bureaucratic position, I was told that the newcomers to get into the Foreign Office, the number of female newcomers is more than half. Nowadays, so the young people, I was so much encouraged that the female number seemed to out over, and the percentage is something like 52.3% female, more male. So I think sooner than later, I think this situation in Foreign Office is going to be drastically changed to be able to show you much better figure of the female employees. Likewise, I am not able to tell how many sort of female lawmakers are going to be produced, because it's up to the election, it's up to the Japanese people. I don't think I can control that because it's lawmakers in the election. But in a trend of my society being symbolized by my ministry, the trend in all sort of society. This is because Prime Minister Abe, this is because of Prime Minister Suga's putting emphasis upon gender equality. But it is not the only one, gender equality. Because of the Japanese rapidly aging society, because of huge budget deficit, you know, the national deficit is amount to be something like 932 trillion yen. Don't worry, this is not dollars and yen. This is in terms of GDP, 170% of GDP, which is huge. This is the biggest amount of the budget deficit in the whole world. And then, as I said, the elderly populace mass over the age of 60, now 36 million. In terms of the percentages, 28 of the total population in Japan. But by 2065, it is destined to be up to as not many as 38.4% in something. So mind you, this huge budget deficit, the rapidly aging society, we need someone to work further. That's why we try to re-employ the persons after 60 or 65, because they are, quite good. And then life expectancy in Japan is as long as something like 89 or 87. So they're eager and they are ready to work. That's one part of the labor market changing. But another very important part of the labor market changing, this women's empowerment. We need women's labor forces. They can be a very good labor forces to rebuild Japanese economy and rebuild Japanese society. But for that matter, we have to make further certain facilities for babysitting or for children education and those sort of things. And these are something that my government, former Prime Minister and current Prime Minister, and then other ministers in charge as a whole government cabinet has been putting most emphasis upon. So I'm hopeful that the situation is going to be changing. And then from the viewpoint of the notional thing of the gender equality, but not limited to that. My society, my government is forced to change that. Otherwise, we are not going to live up our life. So that's where Japan is being faced with.
Exactly. Well, I think both you and I are over 65, both of us.
Yes, I am.
As am I, and we're both working. You're doing a very good job. Please keep working. Here's a question from Jim Reed at YKK about the trade agreement between the United States and Japan.
Right.
From your perspective, what was the most useful provision of that trade agreement, and what is the most challenging provision of the trade agreement?
Yes, indeed, we signed two trade agreements on goods and then agreement on e-commerce. I had a privilege to be instructed by my government to sign the documents together with my very good friend, United States Representative Ambassador Bob Lighthizer in front of your President Donald Trump in the White House. But the negotiations were taking place between Bob Lighthizer and then Minister in charge, the current Foreign Minister, Mr. Motegi. But I joined Mr. Motegi, and then we did a very fierce and very serious negotiations over something like more than 6 months or something, very intensively. And then we came to a conclusion by last September at the time of the UNGA for two leaders to declare that we are able to tell the audience that we came up to agreement in principle. And then the final documents were able to be signed between me and Bob Lighthizer on the 6th of October last year. Now, as I said, these documents, and particularly the first one, is an agreement on trade in on goods. The fundamental points were how to deal with agricultural products and automobile or other industrial goods. And they made a very serious negotiations, and at the final stage, from time to time, tete-a-tete, one-on-one negotiations between my minister, the current Foreign Minister Motegi, and his opposite number, USTL Ambassador Lighthizer, only between two. Sometimes I joined up, sometimes I left them, but I think the end result was, I do believe, I don't think I'm able to go down into details of something because I have to explain to every provision of everything. Sure. You know, in agricultural products, a whole sort of, whole bunches of things, as barleys or corns, rice, and then industrial products. Of course, the biggest one is autos. But not only autos, but other sort of industrial goods. So that was really sort of complicated and then in-depth negotiations at the very high level, at the expert level. But all in all, I think the end result produced has been some kind of win-win game between the two. Both of us have been very much benefiting. And then both of us are able to protect our own national interest to you and to us. And then e-commerce is something very ambitious. I think this is the first time to show to the international community that the biggest economy and third biggest economy were able to end up with the full-fledged international undertaking on particular subject matter of digital and e-commerce. So I don't think I'm not able to go down into technical detail or something, but all in all, these trade negotiations and these trade agreements are something which I think I can tell you proudly of a very, very good success.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to turn to, we're running out of time. I'm going to sort of ask for a short answer to a complicated question, and I apologize for that, but I have to ask at least one security question, and that is, this is from Jonathan Brewster at the North Carolina Japan Center.
Right.
And he says, see, the People's Republic of China is growing in political and economic strength, yes, and flexing its muscles. We've seen that most recently in Hong Kong and in the South China Sea. Involved pressuring Taiwan, involved in a lot of pressure on Australia right now coming from China. How can Japan and the United States cooperate more to address this growing Chinese economic and military strength through our diplomatic and economic channels?
Well, yes, indeed, I think everybody should agree to the single fact that the current situation to do with China is, in terms of the modern history of the international relations, very much unprecedented. This is a big country. This is a landmass, populous mass, long history, rich people, rich culture, rich natural resources, and rich tourism, and it's growing. So I think we are destined to need China. I don't think anybody can think of the world without getting some kind of contacts and relations with this huge country which is growing. So I think both United States and Japan, and then every other leading members of the international community must be in a position to need China. But the point is, we need China to be more rule-based. We need China to be more internationally responsible. We need China to be abide by the set of rules which we make, which they make, which everyone makes. Sometimes they don't. So one thing is that you see when it comes to trade and economy and the investment, and then intellectual property rights, or some space, or some new technologies, some of the internet things and something. Not only these, but also, as you say, political military things. I think this is a really serious matter. The Chinese vessels keep intruding the adjacent waters and territorial waters of the Central Islands in East China Sea virtually every day. And then the number of these intrusions seem to be increasing in comparison to the number of the period before COVID-19. People are talking much about COVID-19 and of course China and us, but behind that scene, they are expanding their military activities, their kind of intrusions. Of course, South China Sea. They've already established outposts for military activities in South China Sea. These are the only salient examples. So the question is how to have a very good sort of management with Chinese, so that China must become more responsible partner, more to be rule-based, and more to be responsible of the international community. I think it is in that context that we share the same object, the same goal, the same notion between you and us. But that doesn't mean to say, by the way, that Japan's geopolitical setup and historical relations and cultural relations, our policies cannot be identical. You are the single ally to us. You have the obligation to defend us if Japan is being attacked by the security treaty. So you are the single one who is the ally. We have so many certain good friends like Europeans and others, but you're the single ally. So we share the fundamental ideas, we share the common goals, but yet, alliance mechanism doesn't mean to say that we have the identical policy agenda. We have the fundamental certain shared goals and fundamental similar ideas, but they can't be identical. So we have our own way to approach the Chinese to let them understand what they should do, and you are doing in a different way, but to try to achieve the same goal.
That was great. Ambassador Sugiyama, I want to thank you so much. This has been, the time has flown by. We've talked about health issues. We've talked about bilateral diplomatic relations. We've talked about security issues. We've talked about the economy. We've talked about social issues, women, cultural issues. This has just been an enlightening time that we've spent together. And I want to thank you so much for giving us this time.
Yes.
I'm gonna do a little bit of advertising for ourselves, which I have to do. I want to thank our sponsor, the YKK Corporation of America. I want to ask everybody on this Zoom to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, World Affairs Council of Atlanta YouTube channel, where we will post the recording of today's session within a couple of hours, and you'll find the recordings of previous programs that we've put on. Today, December 1 is Giving Tuesday. So I'm going to make a huge pitch. Our board will double any contribution. And let me say it again. It's going to double match any contribution that you make to the World Affairs Council. So if you contribute $100, it will become $300.
Right.
So your 100, and they're going to match it with 200. So great return on investment. I wish I were getting that on my investments. So please make a contribution to the World Affairs Council today. We've got upcoming programs on Thursday, a program on doing business in Korea with the chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea, James Kim. And then Wednesday of next week, a members only off the record session with Her Royal Highness Princess Rima, the ambassador of Saudi Arabia to the United States.
Yes, I know her very well.
We hope to get to know her much better next week. And this is going to be a great program. I want to thank Sekiguchi Hisashi from the Embassy of Japan in Washington, who's been our contact putting this program together and has been extremely helpful, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you.
And of course, I want to thank Fernando Lucchini, our executive director, and Valerin Lopez DeFrank, who is the producer of this show. Mr. Ambassador, thank you again. I hope you'll come back in 6 months.
We will.
After you've had an experience with the new Biden administration, and we can talk about Japan, US elections with some experience under our belts.
Yeah, it's my really privilege and honor to be with you this afternoon. And thank you very much indeed for your everything.
Thank you so much. And thank all of you in the audience for attending. I hope to see you all on Thursday. Thank you again very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.